nightmare. Ray smuggled them back from Somerville.
The film begins in New York City, 1904. Members of the New York Fire Department arrive at the Manhattan Adventurers Society in response to smoke billowing out of a room. The smoke is sucked back into the door frame. As one of the firefighters places his hand on the door, his hand gets stuck and starts to freeze. The firefighters break down the door, revealing a small room filled with dozens of frozen corpses. An unknown language plays from a phonograph in the background. In the shadows, a mysterious figure holds an orb containing an ancient evil. As the orb opens, the frozen bodies shatter, and a dark mythical creature appears to be trapped inside the orb. In the present day, New York City, the Spenglers, Phoebe, Callie, and Trevor, plus Mr. Gruberson, have moved to Manhattan from Somerville to become full-time Ghostbusters. They're chasing a ghost called the Sewer Dragon through the streets of New York City. Phoebe shoots at the dragon with her proton accelerator gun, while Trevor nearly traps it with his toy car before it starts to fly out of range. Callie sets out a drone unit, which traps the sewer dragon in a container from the drone. However, Gruberson ends up crashing into a rack of city bikes, causing a lot of damage. This incident hits the news, putting a negative spin on the Ghostbusters due to the damages caused throughout the city during the hunt. The family meets with the Ghostbusters' old nemesis, Walter Peck, who has now become the mayor of New York City. He chastises them for not only continuing their work but also for employing Phoebe, as she is still a minor. It's also shown that while Gruberson is trying to make an effort as a surrogate father figure to Phoebe and Trevor now that he's dating their mother Callie, Phoebe still hasn't quite accepted him. The Ghostbusters return to their headquarters, bankrolled by Winston, one of the retired Ghostbusters. Just as they're adding the sewer dragon to their containment unit, which is almost at maximum capacity, it starts to shake violently, and Callie quickly helps to push the lever, making the light turn green, meaning everything's safe now. Trevor spots a green slime dripping down his room and goes upstairs to find a mountain of junk food. Inside the pile, a green Slimer ghost flies through Trevor, covering him in goo before disappearing through the wall. Ray and Podcast are trying to use artifacts from other customers to forge a connection to the afterlife for their new online show. A woman uses a watch from her late husband for Ray to try and read, but he gets nothing. Podcast smashes the watch with a hammer. Later, they're visited by Phoebe, who brings a jar with some substance, just as Ray requested. Podcast takes her to the basement, where they meet a group of tiny little Stay Puft marshmallows. Meanwhile, a package is brought upstairs, and the marshmallows run away to hide, as if scared of something. A customer, Nadim, brings some artifacts to the store, including the same orb seen in the beginning. He explains that the artifact belongs to his grandma, and now that she's dead, he just wants to sell it for some cash. After some careful examination, Ray notices an ancient writing on the orb and senses that the orb might contain some supernatural being. Ray tries to use his PKE meter on it and gets an instant reading. The energy emitted from the orb causes a surge that breaks the meter and causes tremors throughout the city. This heavy shaking affects the Ghostbusters containment unit, causing a crack on the wall. As one of the older Ghostbusters members, Julie, comes to check on the crack, she tells Gruberson that Winston will bring one of his parabiologists to fix it. Gruberson also learns that the Ghostbusters had another secret underground headquarters owned by Winston. Later that day, the family answers a call to hunt down a ghost across the city, leaving Phoebe behind. She becomes very sad about not joining them in the hunt. Phoebe plays chess all by herself in the park when one of the chess pieces starts to move on its own. Finally, the ghost reveals herself to be Melody. She expects Phoebe to get scared and run away, just like every other human. Phoebe explains that she's used to seeing ghosts and that Melody doesn't look scary at all. Melody explains that she was once a human but died during a fire breakout, and that's why she appears to have some flames all over her body as a result of her gruesome demise. She tells Phoebe that she isn't very confident about her chances of crossing over to the other dimension. She happens to be very good at the chess game and wins Phoebe severely before disappearing. The family is invited to a ghost research facility, funded by Winston, which includes a parabiologist named Lars. He explains that, due to the accumulation of ghosts for decades, the containment unit is running out of space. They plan to create a portal to the other dimension so that some ghosts can be freed in their own world. Coincidentally, a teenage intern working there reunites with Trevor. Lars demonstrates extracting ghosts from a possessed object by separating the energy from the host and then transferring the actual ghost to a containment unit. Winston shows them their new containment unit, which has infinite confinement space, in case their old one runs out. The Spenglers are introduced to some new types of ghosts for their amusement, one of them being a possessor, a tiny monster that can possess anything around it, making it extremely dangerous. Ray brought the orb for closer examinations. Lars notes that the other captured ghosts in there have become drawn to the orb. During the examination, the facility experiences a power surge when Lars tries to extract the energy source from the orb. The ghosts try to escape their confinement, and when Lars goes to grab the orb, his arm is nearly frozen off. That evening, the Ghostbusters receive a call about a ghost in a nearby food store. Phoebe and Podcast are the only ones around to respond. Ignoring Callie's warning, they head to the store to investigate. They find Melody as the ghost bothering people. Podcast gets ready to trap her, but Phoebe can't bring herself to do it. Melody visits the firehouse and continues chatting with Phoebe, who shows her the facility and the containment unit. She takes interest in the orb and notes a strange language coming from it. After chatting with Phoebe, Melody is later seen out on the streets on her own, speaking to a growling voice and asking if Phoebe is really the one he wants for his plan. Trevor is still trying to trap the slime monster that's been storing garbage on his rooftop. As he's about to trap it, a tremor hits the building, making the ghost escape again. The crack on the wall of the firehouse's containment unit is becoming more prominent, with frost all over it. They decide to visit the underground facility, where Lars explains that the orb is a prison for an ancient demon, and his power of destruction is ice. The only counter for ice is fire. The team decides to trace the orb back to the person who sold it to them in the first place, unaware that the possessor has made its way out of the containment. The team visits Nadim at his house for further information on the orb. He shows them some iconic portraits and takes them to a secret room covered by brass, which was used to keep the orb to protect humanity. A PKE meter indicates that Nadim himself has spiritual energy. Lars and Lucky bring Nadim to Venkman for further research, and it is discovered that Nadim has the ability to manipulate fire whenever Venkman starts to get him angry. Phoebe and Podcast join Ray in going to the New York Public Library to learn more about the orb's origins. They meet an expert named Dr. Hubert Wartsky, who explains it for them. Centuries earlier, a power-mad king sought help from a powerful entity called Garaka in his conquest, but Garaka had his own plans to use his powers to bring forth a new ice age. A team known as the Firemasters, Nadim's ancestors, used their powers to imprison Garaka in the orb and steal his horns that gave him his power. If Garaka becomes free once more, New York would experience the death chill built from their fear. The orb then starts to emit the same language heard earlier. As the team starts leaving, a ghost that stowed away with Podcast the Possessor goes loose around the library, forcing the three to chase it. Ray even runs into the original library ghost, from the very first movie, at one point and is still spooked by her. The ghost then makes its way outside and possesses the lion statue Fortitude outside the library. Phoebe uses her proton pack to fire a stream and destroy it, just before the cops arrive. Peck uses this as another good reason to come down on the Ghostbusters and try to get them shut down for good. He has the firehouse condemned and has their equipment repossessed. Phoebe is also arrested for refusing to comply with Peck, while Winston chastises Ray for getting her and Podcast in trouble. Melody visits Phoebe again as she wants to be alone. After they talk some more, Phoebe decides to use a way for her and Melody to be on the same physical plane, by having Phoebe briefly separate her spirit from her body for 2 minutes. The procedure works, and Phoebe becomes a ghost, but this is when Melody reveals her true intentions. She is working for Garaka, who cannot use a ghost like her to open the orb, so he needed a living person, Phoebe, to do the job for him, in exchange for helping Melody cross over to be with her family. He possesses Phoebe's body to speak the incantation, and the demon ghost comes back to life. Phoebe's spirit returns to her body as the rest of the team tries to help her. Lucky tries to fire a proton blast at Garaka, but he freezes and shatters the stream. Callie and Gruberson help Phoebe while Ray, Winston, and Janine also arrive. They realize Garaka is going to try and free the other ghosts for his death chill plan to take effect. Outside in the city, everything starts to freeze over and produce hundreds of deadly icicles that nearly kill people. Everyone makes it to the research lab to get equipment before Venkman and Nadim join in the fight. Ray tries to get Nadim to find a way to tap into his Firemaster abilities to help fight Garaka. Meanwhile, the Possessor ghost comes back and tries to kill everyone by possessing a proton pack, but Nadim is able to redirect the blast out the window with his powers. The ghost then possesses Pizza and is promptly devoured by Slimer. Lucky tells Phoebe that regular proton blasts won't be enough against Garaka, so Phoebe lines her blaster with brass since it is similar to the orb's material that can trap Garaka. The demon ghost makes his way to the facility, and the Ghostbusters' efforts against him remain futile, and he has almost all of them trapped in ice. Nadim tries to use his fire powers on Garaka, but he has run out of lighter fluid since he was practicing with it a lot. Downstairs, Phoebe talks to Melody, who is remorseful of her actions. But Phoebe tells her that Garaka was never going to help her cross over like he said, and that she had the ability to do that herself all along. Phoebe goes to face Garaka herself, with her brass actually managing to strike Garaka, but he still manages to overpower her. Melody then uses her flame to light a match for Nadim, allowing him to use his powers to bend fire against Garaka. The Ghostbusters are freed, but Garaka breaks open the containment unit, unleashing every ghost the team has ever captured. However, this leads the old Ghostbusters to realize that Garaka has just made an even bigger containment unit, and with everyone's combined efforts, they can stop him. The Ghostbusters fire their proton blasts alongside Nadim's firebending, and Garaka is quickly brought down and horned once again as he becomes trapped. The ice outside begins to disappear, and Melody finally crosses over after saying goodbye to Phoebe. The Ghostbusters emerge to find a crowd of cheering New Yorkers, and Peck. He gets ready to shut them down yet again, until the other citizens force him to support them and view them as heroes since, if not for them, the city would be under 3 feet of ice. Peck has no choice but to change his tune. Moments later, Slimer and the sewer dragon fly out of the facility and into the city. The Spenglers and Gruberson then suit up, with Phoebe calling Gruberson Dad, and head out to bust more ghosts. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to our channel for more videos.